and welcome to the Black Tower Podcast. My name is Aaron.
And I am Andrew.
And together we're going to talk about some really bad dudes today.
Oh, these motherfuckers.
You want to give us our spoiler warning there, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. I'd be delighted. This episode contains selected portions of several books in the Wheel of Time. If you have not read the entire series, you are in danger of being spoiled. And we don't mean like the milk.
Ooh, spoiled chunky milk. Sounds good. So I have a quote. I have a quote here to introduce our subject, what we're talking about today. And the quote is, "The children have authority wherever the light is, which, and where the light is not, we bring it." And that was Dane Bornhold, R.I.P.
Yeah, sure. Rest in peace, asshole.
Yeah, right. If you haven't guessed, we're talking about the Whitecloaks today, or the Children of the Light, who people call Whitecloaks. I take it they're not too happy about the name.
No, man, they fucking hate it.
It's pretty accurate. They run around like a bunch of little Nancys wearing white cloaks. Like,
yeah.
Look at my cape. It's white.
It's so white and clean.
It
is very nice, yes.
I am pure. You are evil.
Dirty commoners.
It's funny because a lot of the times we see the Whitecloaks are actually dark friends, or at least being controlled and influenced by dark friends, which I don't know. I feel like it's kind of Robert Jordan's way of saying, don't always take things for the way they look on the surface. Like, it could be all white and clean and pure on the surface, but underneath, it's evil and dirty.
Yeah, we see that a lot, like in our own, real world history for sure.
Right,
it happens all the time. Everything from the people that believe that like Congress is controlled by the Illuminati to name anything.
Lizard people.
Yeah, the lizard people.
The lizard people.
The pyramids were built by aliens. I tell you, aliens.
Oh, that's true. I saw it on a movie.
The freaking History Channel got just aliens.
No, Stargate.
Oh, yeah. Well, fair enough. If it's on Stargate, it's real. It's almost like something's not real until you put it on Facebook. Right. So
you're not in a relationship till you change your status on Facebook.
I know, right? Oh, man. So I guess we'll get into a little bit on the Whitecloaks, the children here. So they function as an independent military organization, and they claim that their purpose is dedicated towards finding and rooting out dark friends and evil and corruption wherever it is. Their zeal in that task often borders on the insane and makes them dangerous opponents. They are just absolutely obsessed with this concept that they cannot be wrong about dark friends, and they will do that anything, the ends justify the means, that it doesn't matter what they have to do to destroy elements of the shadow, that it's all justified in the end.
Right. And we see that a couple times where they're even presented with evidence that someone is not a dark friend, or someone is doing, walking in the light, to use their own words, and they just categorically deny it. They're just so single-minded that anybody that they claim is a dark friend is a dark friend, even if they're one themselves.
Oh, you say you're not a dark friend? Must be a dark friend.
Right.
So their headquarters is called the Fortress of the Light, and it can be found in the city of Amada. I'm sorry, League of Legends is fucking me up. I look at that, and for some reason, I want to say Demacia.
Amadicia?
Amadicia. Let's go with that.
It is decided.
Amadicia. So even though Amadicia has a king, the children hold so much political and military power there that they are undoubtedly the rulers. No one can test that they don't rule Amadicia.
Yeah, it's generally accepted as common knowledge that the Whitecloaks are in charge there.
Yeah, we'll get more into that element later because there's some interesting stuff that the books tell us about the Children of the Light
Right.
and how they came to that position in Abadicia. But they typically refer to themselves as the Children. Again, going back to what Aaron said earlier, Whitecloaks is like a disparaging name against the Children of the Light. But that is, of course, due to their snowy white cloaks that they wear over their armor, and is their most distinguishable feature when they wear it, and it makes them easy to identify, and you can instantly recognize them with that.
Right. I kind of view it as if you've ever seen Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, like the King Arthur character he's wearing armor, but he's got this like white, like long tabard that goes over his armor that kind of changes the appearance and marks him as something special. That's how I kind of view it, as they're all wearing kind of armor, and it might even be different types of armor depending on who they're from, because the organization kind of pulls people from all over the world, all over the land. It's pulling people from different countries. So you might have all different styles of armor, I think. And the thing that connects them all is that they're wearing this white kind of a overcoat over top of their armor.
Yeah, I've always thought of it, like when I picture it in my mind, I always think of it more as the tabard rather than like a cloak. Because a cloak implies that it's almost like a jacket, just a really long jacket. Like I always think of cloak as like trench coat, but without the dedicated like buttonholes and everything and a hood.
Yeah,
whereas like the tabard just like kind of slips over the head and just covers the front and back.
Right, like a cloak would be somewhere between a cape and a full-on trench coat, somewhere in between. But yeah, I view it as kind of like a slip that goes over top of the armor.
The Whitecloaks are coming. The Whitecloaks are coming.
Oh my gosh. Like the British.
Yes, like only the British.
More of an asshole than the British.
Yeah. Some British guys just like, I say.
Yeah. Our British listeners, all 5 of them, are sipping tea and going, oh, those colonial assholes.
You ungrateful colonial bastards. Ungrateful? Yeah.
My point is that we're not talking about English people today. We're talking about the redcoats that we learned about during the American Revolution. And as Americans, we're clearly biased. So I don't know if that makes me the asshole, but whatever.
We'll just claim cultural differences. It works, right?
I'm okay with it.
So going back to their white tabards.
Right.
It's so they all have a golden sunburst worked into it, and it's on the left breast side of it. And
not all of them, because there's this division of the Whitecloaks, or the children, that everybody calls the questioners, and they have like a different symbol, right? They have
so everyone except for the High Inquisitor still has the golden sunburst, but for the regular questioners, not the High Inquisitor, he's the only one that wears just the like red shepherd's staff, right. I believe is what it's called. But everyone else has that. They still have the shepherd's staff, but it's behind the golden sunburst.
Right, it's like a combined icon.
Yeah, let me
like a shepherd's crook, like a little staff.
Yeah. Because I remember going through it and looking again, because I remembered the same thing you were talking about. So they're actually called the Hand of the Light.
And everybody, even the other Whitecloaks, call them the questioners, and they don't like it. Just like everybody calls the children the Whitecloaks, so they don't like it. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. So they wear the same clothes as the other children, except they have the blood red shepherd's crook emblazoned behind the sunburst. And then, like I said, the High Inquisitor wears only the red crook, devoid of the flaring sunburst. That shows him as, the head of the Hand of the Light, or the questioners. Let's see. Each garb is further adorned with silver lightning bolts for under officers and golden stars or knots in increasing quantity to indicate rank for higher officers. They all, for armor, they have the conical metal helmets and plain breastplates. All children wear swords, though never in the audience chamber of the Lord Captain Commander or under the Dome of Truth. So they do have some formality where they do not wear weapons or wear their sword when they're with the Lord Captain Commander or, in the Dome of Truth.
Right. Which, I think that's to protect the Lord Captain Commander from assassination, which, the rule doesn't work if they don't follow it, which they don't.
Yeah, not always.
Because he does get killed.
Yes, he does. It's it's in the prologue of is that Winter's Heart?
I don't think so. I think it's the book before that. I can't. I've read them all so close together, like just one after the other That
A Crown of Swords.
Yeah, it kind of
It's
blends
in the prologue. Together. Yeah, Pedro Nell gets assassinated in A Crown of Swords during the prologue.
Right.
And then after him, Lord Captain Eamon Valda becomes the Lord Captain Commander for a time until Galad Damondred takes over. Elaine's stepbrother, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or half brother, whichever.
Or half brother. Yeah, I think it's a half brother. I think it's the same mother, different father.
Right. And because he came first.
Yeah, Morgassi or Morgassi. She had several lovers. Morgaze. There you go. I'll get it one day.
She had many lovers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Tom.
Let me play with your mustaches, Tom.
Let me play with your flute, if you know what I mean.
Oh, dirty.
It never stops. I still love that. The tweet you put out with the screenshot. Who was that with that you were texting or whatever?
My sister.
Yeah, she's like in the intro. She's like, Andrew mentions porn, and you're just like,
It's like I didn't know how to react to that.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
unfiltered, uncensored.
She thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But anyway, so more about the Children of the Light. So they were founded in FY 1021 during the War of the 100 Years by Lothar Mantelar. They were originally preachers working to expose dark friends using Mantelar's book, The Way of the Light, as their guide. And at first, they actually only defended themselves against the shadow, but by just under 100 years later, about 90 years later, in FY 1111, they became a fully militarized force. And over the 1,000 years or so after that, as the influence of the Aes Sedai began to ebb, and kind of go down due to declining numbers and failure to prevent the War of the 100 Years, that's whenever the Whitecloaks started to become more powerful. And in the 1930s NE is when they reached that agreement with the king of Amadisia, who agreed to let them establish a permanent base that we now know as the Fortress of Light in the capital city of Amador. However, as soon as their power very quickly outpaced that of the king replaced, they moved the royal palace, Serinda Palace, as it's called, from the capital. And the Amadisian army was reduced to basically just an auxiliary force underneath the Children of the Light.
Right, because what would they be needed for?
Yeah,
Nothing.
I know, right? You dare say our cause is not just? We serve the light.
There's basically, reading it through the books, there's basically no crime in this area. There's no, there's very little dark friend activity that's kind of known, and it's just generally viewed as a nice, safe place where nothing bad ever happens, unless you're a dark friend, unless somebody manages to scrawl the dragon fang on your door, then you're screwed.
Yeah, which I think half the time we find out it was probably a white cloak that scrawled the dragon fang.
Well, I mean, Sometimes, yeah, but a lot of times it seems like this paranoia infects anybody around them, and it's from their teachings and from the things that they say, and it's to the point where people start suspecting other people, neighbors who they've known their whole lives, will in a heartbeat, under cover of darkness, kind of scrawl that dragon fang on somebody's door and then be like, "Oh, I didn't even know who would do such a thing." It's like during the day we're all friends, but at night we suspect each other, and this
Yeah.
kind of infectious paranoia kind of follows the White Cloaks wherever they go.
Yeah. Well, like before we started recording, you brought up the example of the Salem witch trials, and they found that during that there were people that would accuse others just to like kind of preemptively counter themselves being suspected.
Right.
So
Because
yeah, I definitely agree.
if I'm going to denounce a witch or a dark friend in this case, then I can't possibly be one myself, right? Like,
Yeah, and we see that that works very well with the White Cloaks because they believe Perrin is a dark friend all the way up until Perrin and his army saves Galen and the White Cloaks right before the last battle.
right. And it's all based off of hearsay and the battle report of, oh, I can't remember his name. One of the White Cloaks who witnessed the battle at Flamme.
Yeah, it was Dane. Wasn't it Dane Bornhold's father?
No, Dane Bornhold, I believe, is the one who died.
Okay, so that was from
battle.
yeah.
And
Who
then,
did he say? Bayar, Bayar. He sent him with the report, and he's the one that because he hated Perrin with a passion.
Right, because he thinks it's all Perrin's fault, and Perrin was a dark friend, and because of his glowing yellow eyes, he must be evil. And
Yeah.
I mean, some of it goes back to when Perrin kills a couple of White Cloaks.
Yeah, the two when they were on their way to Camelin.
Right, they're at a steading, and the White Cloaks kill Hopper, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Shed a tear for Hopper, and they Perrin retaliates, just kind of loses his mind and goes apeshit, starts killing White Cloaks with his axe. And
I think
that's really when they've decided that, even if he isn't a dark friend, he still needs to die because the penalty for killing a White Cloak is death.
Yeah.
So he's pretty much just screwed in their eyes from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. So further in their history and their rise to power, under Pedron Nail, and in 1957, they launched an assault on Altara, trying to bring them underneath their rule and extend their influence. And this became known as the White Cloak War. However, Ilian and Morandi intervened in the conflict, and the children were forced to abandon their attempt, despite apparently significant military gains and successes, which is where a lot of Pedron Nail's fame kind of comes from, leading in that endeavor.
Right. And we see there's at least one scene with him in his office kind of reminiscing about military campaigns and looking at banners of foes that he's vanquished and kind of having good feelings. And then, we get told that the lead Inquisitor is a dark friend and directly underneath of and reporting to Shaidar Haran, the head Myrdral.
Yeah. So over the years, the Children of the Light, they attempt similar things to extend their influence, of course, into Altara more, but Gelden and Tarabon, however, it winds up being all contained for the most part in Amadisia. In 1998, they launched an attempt to kind of help with the rebellion in Andor and everything. We see this starting up whenever we see Rand and Matt and the other central characters make it into Camelin, and you can tell there's a faction that's for Queen. I'm going to butcher her name again. There we go, Morghese. And the faction against, which you can denote by those that wear either the white cloth or the red cloth. The red cloth being those that support Morghese, and then the white being those that oppose. And it almost seems to link up with the symbol of the Whitecloaks, who are also, patrolling the city and exercising their influence, they're like strumming up support through. There's a rising discontent with the Queen's allegiance with Tar Valon. However, the plan ultimately fails, as we see that Morghese remains in power. Though we can get more into why that is at another discussion, because she doesn't do it. But she doesn't. We find out she doesn't do it by herself.
Some of the reason it seems like the Whitecloaks always fail, and I think that's very much on purpose, to where he's maybe trying to send a message that like religious extremism or zealotry, or however he was thinking about it at the time. We think about it as extremism now. It doesn't always work out for the people who are the extremists. And I think he was trying to make a very clear message that, you can flex your zealot muscles as much as you want and try and make things work out the way you want them to as much as you can. But in the end, truth and justice and goodness is going to prevail. It's kind of
the light always has the high ground.
Yeah. And even though you might claim to be of the light, it's about what's on the inside and not what color cloth you have draped over your armor that matters.
Yeah. So they also had a plan that we find out through reading the series to resurrect the kingdom of Almuth as another stronghold for the Children of the Light. And they were hoping that by forcing Tarban to have pressure from the north and the east, that it would force Tarban to fall under their influence. However, this failed because of the arrival of the Shanchan, the Helene. Not a specific person, but what they call their forces that would come in and retake what was once theirs.
Right. The return.
Yeah. So Pedronale learns later of their return and the returning forces rather, and rallies the Children of the Light's military in preparation for anticipated attack. But it's at this point that he gets assassinated. This is what we see in the prologue of A Crown of Swords.
He's in the process of gathering all the forces of the Children of the Light into one place so that he can have kind of a concentrated military force to use against the Shanchan or anybody who would oppose them. He's kind of preparing himself for the last battle.
Yeah, and he's got all the information together. He's getting everything together to do this, and then he's assassinated, and he can't pass on any of the information. Right. So that leaves the total force of the Children of Light at a disadvantage against the Shanchan.
And his assassination kind of reminds me of when the Amerlin is kind of deposed earlier in the series. She's kind of collecting all this information, trying to prepare everybody for the last battle, trying to help Rand and Moraine. And somebody gets mad. Elida gets mad about what she's doing, and they kind of take it out on her and depose her and kind of get rid of her. And that's kind of the same thing that they did to Pedronale and the Whitecloaks. Is he's got a plan. He's moving forward. He's pulling everybody in together, and somebody saw an opportunity to take him out and gain control and do things the way they wanted to, and so they just took it.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting parallel to where it doesn't matter which organization you're part of, this
dirty
greedy
politics.
This kind of self-serving politics
It's like
without
House of
any
Cards.
regard for there was no regard for the long-term plan of the organization, whether it's the White Tower or the Whitecloaks. There was kind of they were just kind of like, oh well, I'm just going to take over. Doesn't matter what this person is planning, or if they were doing good, or if they were going to save the world. Like
Yeah.
Suan could have legitimately helped save the world with the things she was doing as the Amerlin, and they deposed her and stilled her, and they were going to kill her basically.
Yeah, they definitely were. But she was saved. And saved even more so later on.
Yeah,
But
but that's a whole different thing.
yeah. So after Pedro and Nail, we get Ema and Valda, who takes over as the Lord Captain Commander. And a few weeks later, the Sanchan invade Amadisia, and they
Right.
capture Andor and the Fortress of the Light, or Amador rather, not Andor. And they do this. They drop troops in the city by using the tow rocket.
Let's be honest, they're dragons.
Yeah, basically. So they drop these troops in this aerial assault, which is of nothing that anybody in the what we consider the mainland, the main central landmass of focus of the story, the series, has really ever had to deal with. You know, people don't just drop out of the sky.
Right.
Because until we see the rocking and the tow rocking, we only see like the Dracar.
And the Gorn, something. It's like a giant toad thing.
Yeah. Well, the Grom, they don't like.
Oh, you mean as far as flying things?
Yeah, as far
go.
as flying creatures, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And those are known as forces of the shadow, which I'm sure the children are like flying. It has to be evil.
Men were meant to fly. God would have given us wings.
Yeah, pretty much. But they make attempts to take back the city in alliance with the Amadisian army, if you can even call it an army. But they were defeated at the Battle of Jeremal, or Jeremel.
Right. Right.
So after that is whenever Valda makes an alliance with the Shanchan, and most of the children aren't very happy with this. So Valda is held responsible for the rape and subsequent disappearance and the presumed mother of the Queen of Andor, Morghese, Trakan. Jesus,
Yep, we're going to go
Christ.
with that.
Trakand. So this is whenever Galad the Modred steps in, who is obviously at this point serving in the Children of the Light, and he kills Valda in a single like one-on-one combat that they call a trial under the light.
Right. Trial by combat. Anybody?
Yeah. Duh, man. It was really badass. But so the other Children of the Light then proclaim him as the Lord Captain Commander, and he leads the bulk of the surviving children out of Amadisia and heads east towards Andor. It is then that they encounter Perrin again, with Galad being led to believe him a dark friend due to what Dane Bornhold and Jarrett Beyer mistakenly told him about Geofram Bornhold's death. So Geofram, Geofram. That makes a lot more sense. What the hell is wrong with me?
I don't know.
But Geofram Bornhold's death and Perrin's ability to communicate with wolves. But this is whenever Perrin saves the children from an ambush orchestrated by Trollocs, and convinced with his Taviran influence also coming into play, Galad then swears to follow Perrin in the last battle, and they travel with Perrin's army to the field of Marilor, where they ultimately do combat against the true forces of the Shadow.
Right.
So yeah, they have an interesting history, and I really like the history they have because it's this really good, in-depth, militaristic rise to power that you would see in essentially, like a modern-day military state.
Right. Where the military is the state, and they're not really connected to a government per se. They are more like a freelance military organization that they've kind of negotiated different access agreements with the different nations, right? Like they, at one point you see they've really been denied access to Andor by the Queen. And when they have her captive, one of the things that they're trying to do is get an agreement between them for the children to have complete and unrestricted access to the kingdom of Andor. And I feel like they have these agreements with all of the other nations in Rand land, if you want to name it that. They have all these access agreements that are different for different nations, but that's kind of how they've been given this free hand as a military force that is not connected to a nation or wasn't in the first place. They've kind of settled in this one location, but they're not ruled by a nation. They're kind of an independent watchdog organization,
Yeah, and I think that's a good haulback to the quote that you used to introduce this about the children having authority wherever the light is.
Right.
And wherever the light is not, they will bring it. So that fanatical, almost, well, not even almost, that fanatical obsession with we're the righteous, we're fighting for the good cause, and if you are against us, you must be against the light, and therefore you need to be destroyed anyway, is their main motivation for, we're allowed to go wherever we want, however we want, because if you walk
Right.
in the light, you see that we're doing the work for the work of the light. So you're going to let us in. And if you're not, then you're someone we need to face down and take out anyway.
And it sounds really great on the surface, right? Wherever the light is, that's where we are. But in practice, it ends up being this really kind of a hateful, assumptive thing where they'll say things like, anybody who refuses to answer a question must be a dark friend. Or, if you are going to refuse us entry to the city, then it must be full of dark friends.
Yeah, and that worked out well for the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition, didn't it?
Oh my gosh. They're so strongly written as a mirror of both the Knights Templar and the Spanish Inquisition that it's almost hard to think about them as anything else. I try and read it as though the Whitecloaks are their own entity, their own thing, but there's so much coding written into the DNA of the organization that it's hard to think about anything but the Knights Templar and the Spanish Inquisition, or kind of what are hundreds of years later Hollywoodized idea of the Knights Templar and the Spanish Inquisition is.
Yeah. I mean, because so obviously everyone knows very early on that, they're against anyone that can touch the one power.
Right.
And there was a good section where it was, go ahead.
I think Tom explains everything in The Eye of the World.
Yeah.
To Rand, Matt, and Perrin, the combo.
Yeah. So there's a good section in the prologue of, which book is it? Lord of Chaos, where we're sitting there reading, and it's Pedro Nail thinking. And he said, in his thoughts, the section I'm talking about says, not until the world saw the tower for what it was, a sink of dark friends meddling with forces mankind was not meant to touch, the force that had caused the breaking of the world. It's their mind that because the one power was used during the breaking of the world and to break the world, that anyone that touches it is a dark friend, and thus all channelers, especially the Aes Sedai, serve the shadow. So it kind of carries on with this, because there's a great many people that don't believe that it was just the male channelers that caused the breaking of the world. They equally blame the Aes Sedai, whether it's for, they touch the same kind of generic mystical power, so they must be as equally, responsible, or, they say they're here to protect us, and they failed and allowed the world to break.
Right. And I think the other kind of in-universe theory that people have is that the male and female channelers are supposed to work together. And because the female channelers kind of pulled back at the last minute and let Louis Theron and all of his male channelers take over, that because they abandoned the men to their fate, that they're also responsible.
Yeah.
It's kind of the other obscure in-universe theory that we come across, kind of half-spoken by other people. And
yeah. I mean, and obviously, we all learned that that's not the case, that that they're not really responsible because they did try to help.
Right. It's the Dark One. The Dark One is responsible,
Yes.
not Louis Theron, not the Aes Sedai, not Perrin with his yellow eyes. It's the Dark One. And they're just afraid to lay the blame where it belongs.
Yeah. But yeah, but the Children of the Light, to kind of like change topics slightly. I mean, it's still obviously on the children or the Whitecloaks, but
Right. Get us back on topic.
yeah. They actually do have a decent organization element to them. So at the top you have the Council of the Anointed, which is headed by the Lord Captain Commander, and they determine policy for the entire organization. And they sit either in the Dome of Truth or in the personal audience chamber of the Lord Captain Commander. So they are the ruling council of the Children of the Light, but it's still presided over by the Lord Captain Commander. So you still have essentially this small, if you look at it in terms of them, not really, I mean, they do have kind of a kingdom, but it's the Lord Captain Commander is going to be the White Cloak equivalent to a king. And he still has a council, but ultimately it's going to be the Lord Captain Commander that has that ultimate lead over everything.
Or maybe more closely related to a president where he still kind of has to answer to a Congress or something like that.
Yeah.
Where he's got a lot of power to act independently, but he still is accountable to the council. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of like how the Emerald seat is still accountable to the Hall of the Tower.
Hall, yeah, the Hall sitters.
Yeah. So then,
almost like Robert Jordan couldn't come up with more than one like form of government. he just painted by numbers and made it with different names for different countries.
it's like, where do they meet? In the hall. Well, what do they do? They sit
in the dome.
Yeah. So then, of course, you have the Lord Captain Commander, who is going to be that supreme leader. And it's traditionally, he stays in the Fortress of Light in Amador and directs the Children of the Light from there. I didn't write down the two exceptions, but there's only been 2 times where the Lord Captain Commander was not chosen by the other Lord Captains from their own ranks. Because at the time that Galad even, well, I think Galad is an exception because he took over. But that's kind of fishy because he didn't take over because of the duel. The other Lord Captains chose him because he won the duel.
Right.
So I'm not sure where the other exceptions are. I don't know, I might be able to figure it out.
The assassination of Pedro would probably be an exception because we don't see any kind of voting or anything. We just see him being assassinated and then that guy just taking over. I can't for the life of me remember what his name was.
Whose name again?
Whoever the White Cloak who took over as the Lord Captain Commander after Pedro Nile.
Eamon Valda?
Yeah. So Eamon Valda kills Pedro Nile and then just takes over.
No, he didn't. He didn't kill Pedro Nile. That was Abdel Omerna, Omerna, and then Valda then killed Omerna.
Oh, okay. I feel like it was all orchestrated though.
I mean, it would make sense because what better way to take over than to have someone else kill, the old commander and then say, I discovered this. I killed him. I got retribution for our Lord Captain Commander.
Yeah, I'd have to reread that section again.
Yeah,
but I feel like there was it's all a conspiracy. Like, were there 2 gunmen on the hill, or was it just one?
Oh yeah.
But I feel like there's a conspiracy at work here behind the scenes to take out the Lord Captain Commander and install a new one without the voting having to happen.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't stay in he leaves. he takes off
Yeah.
to go. I can't remember where, but he takes a big chunk of the army and goes somewhere, which is partially why the Shanjan had such an easy time taking over the city.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That, and they have dragons.
yeah. When I'm looking at the list of the Lord Captain Commanders, it only lists Pedronel, Eamon and Galad. So it must be referring to Eamon and Galad as the two that were chosen. And maybe the normal circumstance is the old Captain Commander steps down and then they choose, where these were situationally forced, or in Eamon Valda's case, orchestrated, because he didn't do it himself and everything. He was helped by Radam Ashwana, the High Inquisitor at the time. Heads up the Hand of the Light.
Right. Yeah, and I do not like that guy.
Nobody does. It's a piece
I think
of
you're
shit.
not supposed to.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to like him. Even though he gets a POV chapter or two, you are not supposed to like him.
Yeah. I don't think anybody really cares too much for the Whitecloaks until Galad takes over and pretty much joins up with Perrin to fight in the last battle. Then they're kind of meant to be distrusted and disliked by Robert Jordan.
Yeah, he's kind of written them to where nobody likes them. People don't want them in their cities. The only people who tend to side with them, as far as like villagers go, you see this kind of division in the Two Rivers when they all come to town to take out Perrin. You see this division in the villagers, and it's the ones who are kind of written as dumb or inbred hicks, the Coplans and the Congers, who kind of side with the Whitecloaks. And I think that holds throughout the series, is that Robert Jordan has kind of written it so that whoever is dumb, whoever is slow or not very smart, are the ones who kind of side with the fanatical Whitecloaks, and they're the ones who are scrawling the dragon fang on people's door.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. He takes the most despicable dark friend that we've already talked about, Padan Fain, has him take on the name of Ordeth, and then has him manipulating the absolute living shit out of the Children of the Light. Right. To the point where he even gets to lead his own contingent of the Children of the Light.
And, it's the corruption of the dagger, I think, is got something to do with it.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think he doesn't have the dagger at this point, but the corruption is inside of him.
Yeah, because he's inherently corrupted by Mortis. Right.
He's been bonded with Mordeth. They're like two halves, split personality almost.
Yeah. I mean, think about the section where, because it was it Dane Bornhold that was leading the main group against Perrin and the Two Rivers?
Right. It's the younger Bornhold.
Yeah, so that would have been Dane Bornhold. So he's sitting there looking at his camp, and it's pristine, it's neat and orderly. And then you look over and you see Ordeth's camp, and it's scraggly, it's dirty, it's not orderly, it's not well maintained.
Right.
And he even looks at it in disgust.
There's flies everywhere, and he's like, the tents are like smeared with shit, and
the cloaks are all dirty. They're not snowy white and pristine like a child should be.
Right.
Even he's like, this is disgusting, and he already doesn't trust Ordeth.
Right. But he was told by, the biggest bigwig, Pedro Nile, that this guy was to be trusted, and that he's good, and so he's got to let him come along.
Yeah. So then going further in the organization, obviously we have the Hand of the Light that everyone knows as the Questioners, that even other Children of the Light tread lightly among. We see that whenever was it Dane's father that encountered one of the Questioners. He was told to take a legion, so about 2,000 men, and he meets up with one of the Questioners, and the Questioner is pretty much ordering him around and telling him what to do.
Right. And they're like, kill these people for us, and slaughter these babies and rape these women, and bring these people in for put these people to the question, and he was like, even as kind of messed up as the White Cloak organization is, he's kind of scratching his head and going, are we really supposed to be kind of killing babies and raping women? And like, he knows it's wrong.
Yeah, because he even questions him. He's like, "This isn't right," and he's like, "Don't question me, child, or you'll find yourself subjected to the questioners."
Right. They use it as this kind of almost a police show.
Let's just say it. They act like they're the fucking SS.
Yeah,
they do.
Well, yeah, they act like they have complete autonomy and
because they almost do.
They're the elite kind of soldiers, and
because the High Inquisitor only answers to the Lord Captain Commander. So by extension, the orders that come down from him come from the same level.
He answers to the Lord Captain Commander and Myrddraw. So,
well, yeah, if we're talking about Radam Aswana himself, yeah. So he's definitely going to be like the head of the SS, that dirty fucking scummy bastard.
Which makes me wonder if some of the soldiers or the children underneath of him weren't necessarily all that bad. Like, maybe they did bad things, but maybe they weren't dark friends. Like the Dark One was able to gain control over a whole chunk of the organization by turning one man at the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that. They were just like, well, we have to follow him. He's our leader. And they're so wrapped up in this fanatical obsession with what we do is just, what we do is for the light. We're serving the Creator and everything. It almost seems like it's just, same thing with the Crusades and everything, that it's this divine guiding hand that is guiding them. And it may be nasty now.
God wills it.
Yep. For the light. So then they also have another section called Spy Masters. And this is their intelligence branch. All information that they get is controlled and handled by Spy Masters, and it's his job to keep the Lord Captain Commander informed. Even within the Children of the Light, the true Spy Master is only known by the Captain Commander, Lord Captain Commander.
There's like a Spy Master General who it's like a puppet appointment. There's no real, it's a hollow shell. There's no real power there. I mean, he's always running around trying to collect information, but what he has is usually wrong, and because he believes everything, right?
Yeah.
and the Lord Captain Commander has his own Spy Master who's a secret.
Yeah. Because we see Pedron Nail actually had that Abdel Amerna as his Spy Master, which explains why he was able to get so close and so private with Pedron Nail to assassinate him.
Right.
However,
and he later becomes important to the Perrin fail storyline.
Yeah, but Amerna didn't even know that he was just a decoy, and that the true Spy Master was actually Nail's. Kind of like you just kind of looked over him, but it was Nail's secretary, Saban Balwer.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is important to the fail Perrin storyline later.
Yeah,
is the Balwer.
Yeah, definitely is. So for their hierarchy, their rank structure, and of course we're going to go from high to low. You have the Lord Captain Commander, and then under him are going to be the Lord Captains, which they command legions, which is normally 2,000 men, but most often it's less than that, and on occasion it's more. Under Lord Captains, you have the senior lieutenants. Under them, you have the lieutenant, which is usually the lowest rank to hold a position of command, and they act as like support officers for their superiors. And then the last officer rank is going to be that under lieutenant. Then you get to more like what you would call enlisted ranks. You have the 100 men or 100 man who commands 100 men.
Or centurions.
More, often more, but sometimes less. They're below officers, but above your common soldiers. Then you have a bannerman, a second bannerman, squadman, second squadman, a file leader, and then regular troops. And then, of course, the Hand of the Light just has the High Inquisitor and then Inquisitor.
It's interesting. He wrote some old Roman military organization into the structure. I wonder if he did that on purpose,
Yeah.
or what's the point of that? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely a very interesting organization. And of course, if you're reading through, you always know it's going to be a chapter involving the Whitecloaks when you see the black and white sunburst icon, which I'm sure
Right.
everybody's figured out that as you read through, you can recognize who the chapter is going to be on centrally because of whatever icon is there.
And if you don't know, you just look them up. Just Google, Wheel of Time chapter icons, and it'll give you kind of a list of what the different icons are and what they mean. Even though I think you're supposed to kind of figure it out for yourself, but
Yeah.
we tend to cheat here in the 21st century.
Yeah, we do.
Robert Jordan's gone, R.I.P., and I'm not playing his game anymore. One of the things that's interesting about the children is they kind of have this philosophy of retribution and redemption, to where they want to rain down fiery justice on anybody who might possibly be a dark friend, but they also believe that, quote, no man is so lost he cannot be brought to the light. Right? There's like this two different things that are going on, in that they want to kill everybody who's a dark friend, but they also think anybody who is can come back to the light. And it's like, well, how are they going to come back to the light if you've killed them?
I think at that point they're like, well, maybe the creator can sort them out and bring them over.
Kill them all and let God sort them out.
Oh God. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic that almost seems counterintuitive. Like, we can destroy anything that's of the shadow, but no one is so far gone to the shadow that they can't be brought back into the light. And it's like, okay, so you believe that people can be redeemed, but there's things like, for parents, example, they're like, he's a dark friend, we got to kill him, got to kill him, got to kill him. Right. But they're treating other people like, well, yeah, you've done bad things, but you can be redeemed.
Yeah, and I think Robert Jordan wrote into the series a lot of dark friends who couldn't be redeemed, or people who were so evil that, like Pat and Fane, they were so evil that there was no coming back. They're just going to be dark all the way to the end. We see that in some of the Whitecloaks that are evil. We see that in this, I can't remember his name, but he's like a peddler who shows up at in the wasteland after Rand.
Oh, it starts with a K. It's like Kedar. That's definitely not it.
Kadar or something. Yeah, but I know who you're talking about, or you know who I'm talking about. I mean,
yeah.
And he's a dark friend, and there's no fixing him. There's no redemption for him in the series. I think in real life, I want to believe that statement is true, that there's nobody who's too far gone that can't be brought back. I think in real life, I want to think that, but I don't know. In the series, Robert Jordan is definitely a pessimist, right? He's definitely thinks that there are cases where there's no coming back.
Yeah. I was trying to see if I could find his name again real quick, because I'm almost done. What book am I on? I'm on the 4th book. Why can I not remember that? The Shadow Rising. That's it.
Right.
Because I'm a little over halfway through, and I've reached the point where Rand has been marked by the two dragons, and they come across the peddlers convoy, and I'm like, I remember this guy. He's evil. It's like Rand is right. This guy's dangerous.
He's dark friend.
Yeah.
And he's dropping little hints to his friends or the people in his party, like, don't trust that peddler or the trader or whatever he calls him. Don't trust that guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think they just look at him as a peddler for the most part. I mean, because nobody thinks like this guy shows up and then he's traveling with us for a little while, and then in the middle of the night, hundreds of leagues from where they should be, we get attacked by an army of Trolloc.
Right.
Maybe there's a connection. Nobody is like, oh, that's weird.
Right.
They say
especially
it's weird,
where you're like, oh, I wonder how that happened. But we are getting way off topic, which I think means we are probably done talking about Whitecloaks.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing is like I was telling you before this, I was trying to do some extra research on the Whitecloaks, and most of the information out there I found is all the same across. Which that's the first thing where we've done research where we don't find some interesting tidbits here and there that are different from the mainstream information. It seems that that their stuff is fairly well cut and dry when it comes to the Whitecloaks. Kind of just they are what they are. Right. I do still believe that they're meant to be disliked by the reader for the majority of the series.
And I think he wrote into their descriptions enough parallels between the Knights Templar, the Spanish Inquisition, and something like the Salem witch trials, to where he's just kind of relying on our innate revulsion for those things in order to drive the kind of hate for this whole organization, to where he doesn't have to explain why they're bad or create a whole backstory for them, and he doesn't actually create a ton of backstory for this group. I mean, he just kind of lets it rest on the merits of Inquisition is bad, hysteria is bad, religious extremism is bad, and we see kind of all of those things in the actions of the different Whitecloaks. Yeah. Even if they're just random soldiers.
Yeah. I mean, because I don't know about you, but I never was a fan of Galad. I never liked him.
Yeah.
And then you see him join the Whitecloaks, and you're like, well, fucking go figure, asshole.
That's a pretty common reaction to him, is to just be like, oh, fuck Galad. I hate that dude.
Yeah. Even Elaine doesn't like him.
Right.
She's like, yeah, I'll fuck the Dragon Reborn, but get away from me, Galad. I hate you.
Right. Well, and there was that whole phase with Tom where that was kind of creepy.
Oh, yeah. I think I just read that one, too. Are you talking about like when she was drunk with Tom, or?
Yeah, and then it kind of, for a whole book, kind of devolves into her kind of sitting on his lap and tugging at his mustaches, and she's starting to remember her childhood, and he's
uncomfortable.
I don't know, being a creepy old man or something.
Yeah,
it could be read as though he was trying to be uncomfortable and keep it a secret, or that he was taking advantage of her and being creepy. It could be read either way.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get the take advantage in that way concept from Tom, because he's still trying to kind of get over the death of the chick that he started to love whenever he runs into Rand and them again.
Yeah, well, she was like 16 too.
Yeah, fair point.
There was a little creepiness there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always felt that Tom looked at Elaine as like more of like a daughter, because of his love for Morghese.
I tend to fall there too, and I think maybe that's the intention of the writer, even though, I mean, some people will tell you that intention doesn't matter for a lot. I think it counts for maybe half.
Yeah.
Half intention and half the way you take it. And I think his intention was that maybe Tom is taking advantage of her, but in the sense of he has always wanted a daughter, and she's there, and she is kind of like a daughter to him, and he's taking advantage of her in the sense that he's getting the emotional uplift or happiness of hanging out with his daughter, even though she's not really his daughter.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know the full story.
Maybe something interesting to talk about in another podcast. You know, to include in like something on like Tom.
That's a whole other episode. Is Tom's creepiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
So I wanted to, before we end here, I wanted to take a second to talk about coming up over the Christmas week, whatever, the episode that's going to release after Christmas. We are doing a joint. Well, they're going to be guests on our show. It's not really a joint episode, but we're going to do it kind of all together. The White Tower is going to be our guests. We're happy to have them.
Woot woot.
And they reached out to their listeners. We wanted to reach out to our listeners, who there is some crossover between the two listener bases. But we want you guys to send us direct message on Twitter, send us tweets, send us emails,
comment on Facebook,
questions you want us to ask each other or questions you want to ask us, and we'll interview each other, ask questions, kind of free flow a whole episode. And you know, if there's not enough questions sent in, we're just gonna wing it, and I think it'll be great. But this is your opportunity to ask us directly questions that don't relate to a specific topic that we were talking about in an episode or anything like that.
Or you can still
go
ask
ahead,
us
send it.
stuff. I mean, I think as long as it's appropriate, you can ask us whatever. I mean, it can even be, I think we're fine with it being questions like specifically for Jen or for Jess or for me or for Aaron.
And I think we're just going to use our judgment. Like if a question comes in that I feel like is inappropriate, I'm not going to ask it. Sorry. You know?
No, not sorry. Fuck that. You know it's inappropriate when you send the question. We're not sorry if we don't ask it because it is inappropriate.
Okay. I
have no tolerance for people that if you're going to come in here and ask like, oh, well, you know, do you do this inappropriate action or something like that? Or like, what's your secret fetish? Like, no, you can fuck right off because that's not what this is for.
Right. It's a Wheel of Time podcast. And I think we've said before, we're trying to stay away from the political stuff. I know some other people in their podcast, a little bit slips in here or there, and we might let a little bit slip in just because of who we are. But we're trying to keep it centered on Wheel of Time and those topics that are, you know, specifically discussed in the books.
Yeah, and I think we're both fine with you asking reasonable questions about us as people, and I imagine Jen and Jess are as well. But we're going to use discernment, and if your question doesn't get asked, that's probably why. Or there were so many questions that were similar that we combined them into one. That could happen too. I could see that happening. Yeah. So, and with bringing that up, I know you sent out the tweet on the Black Tower podcast Twitter. Obviously, it is Wednesday now when we're recording this.
Right.
There was no midweek follow-up episode to reactions from the last one. There really wasn't any viewer feedback. There weren't really any questions or emails, that kind of stuff. So if we don't have the material to do the podcast with, then obviously it can't be done, because I could sit here and try to talk for an extra 15 minutes, but it's going to be me or Aaron rehashing whatever was already said from the last podcast.
Right.
And I don't want to, may not necessarily be, well, I think it's a waste of all of our time, because if you want to hear what we have to say on, you know, the last podcast topic, then you can just listen to the podcast, and we're literally just going to rehash the same thing because there's no new stimulus or questions to answer from viewers or, you know, thoughts that have been brought up. And that's not to criticize like any of the viewers for, you know, not responding to it or having things to say about it. Whether that's maybe because you've been busy with the holidays or whatever. I mean, it happens. And, you know, we're not going to be mad about that. Just, we want you guys to
Right.
know that if we don't have the material to do it, we're not going to be able to do it.
Well, and I think it's just another chance for us to, by our actions and our words, both, reaffirm our commitment to putting out quality content over quantity. And we're not just going to put out random half-hour episodes in the middle of the week just to drive up our listener numbers or how many downloads we get, because we're not really. I mean, I know when we hit 1,000 downloads, I sent out a tweet that was like, "Hey, we hit 1,000," but I wanted it more to be like a celebration of all the people that were listening and to show how thankful we were, rather than to kind of brag on ourselves and what our numbers were. We're not really too concerned with, where the numbers are or what kind of episode gets more numbers than others or whatever. So we're not going to put out an episode in the middle of the week just in order to get 100 more listens or whatever. We're only going to do it when there's legitimate things that need to be talked about. People have questions, or maybe if you're listening and you heard something in the episode that you're like, that's not right, that's not how I read it, send it to us and we'll talk about it, and we'll be like, you know what, that's a legitimate way to read that passage or whatever. We want to discuss. Part of the reason we started this podcast was to talk about things, and not just with the two of us, because Andrew and I, we have really similar viewpoints on a lot of things. I don't know if you guys picked up on that.
Yeah.
We disagree sometimes, but a lot of times we agree on things. And, I wanted to, and I think Andrew did too, we wanted to start a forum where, other people who didn't necessarily agree with us had a voice too.
We welcome those challenges, guys. We want you to challenge. Like if you honestly, or even if you just know of another thought process out there on something that we've said or talked about, we want to hear it. I love having, and this goes beyond just the Wheel of Time, but all of my personal beliefs challenged, because I see it in that one or two things is going to happen. Either it's going to correct what I feel is a wrong way of thinking for me, or it's going to show me, make me do the research and the looking into it. I'm going to feel even more confident in what I believe. So either way, it's a good thing for not just the person being challenged, but the person doing the challenging. Because we're not going to sit down and degrade people because they're like, hey, this is what I think about, this or whatever. We're not going to degrade anybody's point of view. We might say we disagree, but at the end of the day, like, how you feel is how you feel about whatever the topic is, regardless of what we or anybody else says.
Right. It's something I tell my wife all the time. She'll be having a moment and she'll be going, am I crazy for thinking this? I'm like, you're allowed to feel your feelings. Don't feel bad for the way that you're feeling or reacting to something. And I think that is an appropriate place to put that in and say, if you're having a thought or a feeling about something in the Wheel of Time, it's a legitimate way to feel. And I want to hear different ways to view the material and the characters in it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, any book series is written with the intent for the readers to enjoy it. And the same way we do the podcast, we're not doing this for the views, because if we were, our first podcast would have been on the topic it was, for sure.
Right.
We wouldn't choose controversial, which we're still going to do controversial stuff, just as it comes up. But instead, it's for the viewers. We want you guys to be like, I want to go and listen because it's entertaining. It makes me think, and you just enjoy it. Not because, we're trying to just get more numbers or everything like that. Like, I personally don't care about numbers. I was shocked at any of the numbers. I was like, who wants to listen to me talk?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I want to listen to you talk too.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Anytime, bro.
Anytime, bro. So I think right there, we're going to end it. We're going to call it a night. We're going to say happy Thanksgiving if you live in the States. If you don't, I know we have some international listeners. we are thankful for you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to eat some turkey and mashed potatoes and all kinds of stuff.
If you don't live in the U.S.,
3 more Thanksgivings that I have to go to.
if you don't live in the U.S., just use the day as a cheat day and just go pig out. And you pretty much got half of what we do, at least on the holiday, down pat. Like, you'll be good.
Yep. But I think to all of our listeners, we are thankful for you right now in this holiday season, and we're thankful for you all the time. But we are especially thankful right now as we're thinking about Thanksgiving and what we're thankful for. And I choose to celebrate it as a holiday of thinking about the things in my life that are blessings and things that I'm thankful for, and all of the colonialism and dead Indians and all of that.
God damn.
It's just kind of leave it all. That's not what this holiday is about. Not really.
Yeah, it's not. It's more like I choose to spend my time thinking about like Skeletor when he fails to take down He-Man every time. Curse you, He-Man!
Curse you.
Yeah, but we are incredibly grateful, and whatever you do during this holiday season, we do hope you enjoy it. We look forward to those of you that continue to listen and interact with us on any of the social media. Again, you can find us on Twitter at Tower Podcast. Gmail is blacktowerpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook as well as a page called the Black Tower Podcast. There's the YouTube channel that it's Podbean that automatically sends our stuff over, right? Yeah. The Podbean service is so kindly to throw up. It's just an audio file with a static image in the title. But you can find us there under the same thing, the Black Tower Podcast, or you can search an episode's title. Am I forgetting anything?
Yeah. We're on Instagram as well, Black Tower Pod. It's pretty low key on Instagram. Like our Twitter is pretty intense. We're on Twitter all the time, both of us. But Instagram is pretty much just kind of pictures and some people interacting. But
yeah, wherever
you are in your social media journey, we probably have a presence.
Yeah. And then, of course, you
Except
can listen.
Tumblr.
Yeah.
I'm not like into Tumblr.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
I still can't figure out how to navigate Reddit. So, which is bad.
Dude, Reddit is the bomb.
Yeah. I've made it to a couple of pages. I just don't have the time to sit there.
Reddit has a pretty sweet Wheel of Time subreddit.
What?
And the people on there are pretty awesome.
Bro, send me the link after we get done.
I will. It's pretty cool. They're pretty great. They are conscientious of where, like, if you make a post and you put in it how far into the series you've read, they'll try not to spoil it past that point. There's also a subreddit completely devoted to Wheel of Time memes, and it's Wetlander humor.
Yes,
right. And then there's one that's all devoted to AL humor, so it's AL humor, but there's nothing in it. It's always just an empty page.
Dude, that's great.
So I'll send you those links.
Yeah, man, for sure.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners already know about those things, where to find them. Yeah. But we are well past an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that for those of us here at the Black Tower, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Andrew.
And goodbye.
Bye.